Hi folks, welcome to another edition of Gold Bazan. This is Pasha Hajian speaking. It's an absolute pleasure for us today to discuss about the AFC Champions League and the Iranian League afterwards. Today I'm joined by the two other directors of this podcast, Sina, Saemian, and Pezhman. First of all, guys, how are you doing today? I'm going to start off with Sina.
Yeah, Pasha, it's great to be here once again and talking to you guys, of course.
Nice to once again talk about Iranian football, and nice to hear your voices, guys.
All right, awesome. So, guys, let's first talk about the AFC Champions League briefly before we transition to talking about the Persian Gulf League. So, as we know, we have, I believe, 4 teams competing from Iran in this year's AFC Champions League. So, looking at Group A, we have Tractor Sazi being part of the team against such as Al Ahli, Al Jazeera, and Al Gharafa. Unfortunately, Tractor Sazi is last place in this group. Sina, can you give us your general thoughts on this group, and especially knowing that Taremi just joined this Qatari side, and there was a little bit of controversial issues that he might, back out of this deal. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, first of all, talking of Taremi and starting with him, I thought I'm not going to say I agree with his move to Qatar, but I think he must have had his own reasons to move away from Persepolis and to move away from Iran. And there was a lot of controversy, of course, after he decided to join Al Gharafa, and there was a lot of news coming out over his failed move to Rizespor in Turkey and how there was a lot of money exchanged between him and a financial supporter of Persepolis by the name of, I think his surname is Hedayati, I might be wrong. So there was a lot of controversy in regards to that. I think he's joined a very good team. Of course, they've signed Wesley Schneider. They were presented together. But I think for him, to be fair, I never really thought he has the ability or the mentality to play in Europe. So I think he's made a wise decision to go to Qatar if he's not going to stay in Iran, and he's joined a team that is in the Champions League. But in terms of the group itself, Traktor Sazi, for me, this is one of the worst Traktor Sazi teams I have seen in a very, very long time. Yahya Gol Mohammadi was in charge of him earlier on in the season. They were banned from 2 transfer windows due to some money that they owed to one of their former players. I think it was a player by the name of. So they missed out on a lot of players. They had a terrible season in the domestic league. They had a terrible start.
Sorry, Sina, can you say the name again? I think you got cut off. Can you say the name again of the player?
His name, I think, is Rodrigo Tosi. He's a Brazilian, half Brazilian, half Italian midfielder. I believe it was his complaint that kind of led to Traktor Sazi being banned for two transfer windows. But due to those really extremely poor results and performances this season, Yahya Gol Mohammadi was sacked halfway through, and a Turkish manager by the name of Ertugrul Saglam, a Turkish manager who is not necessarily well known, but I think he's done well so far since he's took over Traktor Sazi. They've managed to bring in a couple of players, a couple of Brazilian players, and 1 or 2 players on loan as well from Zobahan, players such as Sona Pahlavan, who I'm a huge fan of. But again, in terms of the Champions League, before the Champions League even started, I didn't think they had much of a chance, and we're 2 games in now and they've lost both games and they haven't even scored a single goal. So I think it's very safe to assume that they will finish as the last team in their group. Especially again because when you look at the other teams, you have Al Gharafa, who, of course, as we mentioned, they've kind of strengthened their team. You have Al Jazeera, who are the current UAE champions, and Al Ahli, Saudi Arabia's one of Saudi Arabia's giants. So it was always going to be a difficult task anyway. But with this squad that they have and the lack of quality in their team, I think it was always going to be a monumental challenge for them.
Pezhman, do you agree with what Sina said, and with the with what situation looks pretty dull that Tractor says he's even going to advance in this group with the likes of Al Ahli, Al Jazeera, and Al Gharafa? But also, if you could just give us your thoughts on this group, if Tractor is going to someone on top of that, would you agree with Sina that Tarmi never had the mentality to even go to Europe, so this is the best he could do after his move from Persepolis?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Sina said. I can't see Tractor bouncing up and doing some magic because, when they got the Champions League spot, from that time to the Champions League actually started, a lot of things, bad things, have happened to Tractor. So they're struggling in the league and they're struggling in the Champions League. And with Ptolemy, well, you know, it's a mentality thing, and he doesn't seem to have what it takes in mentality for doing that hard work in Europe. But we don't know him personally, so we don't know the main reasons why he decided to make this move. I wish him the best of luck, and he's a good player, and I'm sure he will do good in the national team, no matter if he will be in the World Cup squad or not, because his talent is at this moment good enough to take him to the Asian Champions League with Al Ghafa, who are doing some exciting things with their squad, with also Schneider coming in.
Right. Guys, let me skip Group B for now. I'm really interested in talking about Group C with Al Sadd, obviously Javi Hernandez, and Morteza Ali Genji are part of this team. Persepolis, Nasaf, and Al Was. Sina, I'm trying to make out of something about this group. Obviously, I would assume that Persepolis is going to advance, but I'm very disappointed to see, the way in the manage they lost to Al Sadd, and also on top of that, does this go on to show you how poor the Iranian Gulf League is? That Persepolis is just running away with it.
I think Persepolis are still a very, very good team. I don't think we should forget that this is one of the best teams that the Iranian top division has seen in a very long time, and all the credit needs to go to Ivankovic for that. But I think one of the criticisms that he's had, and I think I've been kind of a critic of him for this reason, is that in the big games he tends to, especially in the Champions League games, he tends to get his tactics slightly wrong, and I think that's what happened against Al Sadd. Last season in the semi-final against Al Hilal, we kind of we saw it. So this time I wasn't surprised. Al Sadd are a very, very good team, and of course we know was Javi and of course Purali Genji as well, and Buneja, the player who scored I think both goals for 2 goals for Al Sadd against Persepolis. So it was always going to be tough for them anyway. But I think going further into the competition, Persepolis and Ivankovic certainly need to be able to get their tactics wrong in the big games. I think he tends to go with a narrow diamond and with 2 strikers, which I'm not sure if it would work when you're going against really good teams, real quality in their team. So I wonder if he will change that going forward. But looking at the rest of the group in Nasaf and Al Wasl, I think Persepolis will still have enough quality to see them through to the next round.
Pezhman, let's talk about someone that has really put himself, lighting up the Persian Gulf League, Ali Alipur, and he's doing such a phenomenal job under Ivankovic's system. Would you say it's Ivankovic's system that is getting the best out of this player, or is this just his natural talent and now that Ali Alipur has hit his peak? And just give us your general thoughts on this group, please.
Well, speaking of Alipur, yeah, I think Branko Ivankovic have found the best possible way to use not only Alipur, but how the Persepolis players attack and how they can use Alipur. Alipur is a decent young player that has stood out in Persepolis this season, sure, but he couldn't have done it alone, and that's maybe one of my fears with Alipur. Sure, he's done great. He scored a lot of goals because he's at the right place at the right time. That's also something we should thank Ivankovic for. What's interesting for us to see now is how can Alipur deal with stronger opponents or maybe even smarter opponents. And him probably being in next World Cup squad for playing the friendly against Libya in Iran. Yeah, Queiroz, he's got a good eye on these kind of players, and we'll see if he managed to convince Queiroz that this is just another good season for a young Iranian player, and then suddenly they just disappear. But I'm hopeful. I think that these kind of new young players, they know how to improve, or at least they know what's what kind of demands there are to improve. And speaking of the group, I mean, I see Al Sadd as one of the favorites in the group, but Persepolis have had a good, decent start, but one win, one loss. But Al Sadd with Xavi and Pur Ali Ganji, as we said, now Pur Ali Ganji is off a couple of weeks or maybe even months, I believe. But these teams in Qatar and UAE, although they are less better teams or weaker teams, they're far more organized, and there's a different harmony in those kind of clubs that you can't find in Iran. And that's even if they are totally crazy when they change coaches all the time, but still somehow they manage to get some good results in the Champions League. So I can for sure see Al Sadd being in the top four at the end of this Champions League run. But I can't see Persepolis doing that right now. But we'll see what happens. They need some luck, I believe.
Guys, before we move on to Group D, the final thing I just want to ask both of you is, obviously Persepolis are very, very close to securing themselves a place in the finals of last year Asian Champions League. Sina, quickly, do you see them even potentially reaching that or no?
I think there is a possibility that they could reach the semi-final once again, but I have my doubts over whether they have real quality to go all the way. But I think if they do manage to get to another semi-final, then it would be a successful campaign for them.
I agree with Sina. Over and out.
Alright, awesome. Guys, let's talk about Group D, which I'm pretty amazed how well SFL is doing in such a tough group. So, folks that are listening to this podcast, SFL is in Group D. Their opponents are Al Rayyan and Al Ain and Al Hilal. It's just such a tough group, knowing with the likes of Al Hilal, especially, and Al Ain, with the talent they have there. Sina, can you give us your general thoughts on this group, and are you very surprised with the work Schaefer has done with this team ever since he's taken the role of Mansourian as manager?
I think if you could handpick four of the biggest teams in each Middle Eastern country, this is more or less what you would come up with. Istiqlal, Al Hilal, Al Ain, and Al Rayyan, and they're all very, very top teams. Of course, I don't need to even speak about how powerful Al Hilal or even Al Ain are. And Al Rayyan, I think they defeated Persepolis last season in the group stages, if I remember correctly. So they're a very, very good team as well. Considering the poor start that Istiqlal had in the season, I gave him almost no chance to get out of this group. But as you said, since Schaefer has come in, I think their fortunes have changed, and in the Champions League, so far they've performed well above my expectations. They managed to get a last-minute draw against Al Rayyan, and they defeated Al Hilal. So I think 4 points from the first two games is a very, very good return in that group. So I think the next game against Al Ain, it will be an indication over how far they can really go. Before the tournament started, I thought to myself, if Estelon managed to get out of this group, it would be a very successful campaign for them. But considering the first two games, and I think the way they have performed as well, I think they will look at the rest of the games in the group stages and think, yeah, we can definitely do this. And of course, once you get to the knockouts, then really, for me, I don't think they have real potential to win it, but I think getting to the quarters, if they manage to get out of the group, then it is a real possibility.
Pezhman, if you could give us your thoughts on this group, and also if you could add this for the viewers or that are listening, is that looking at the individual talents these teams have, Al Ain, Al Hilal, and Al Rayyan, it's phenomenal. And would you say it came down to Schaefer's man management that is getting out of the best out of these players? And right now, SFL is doing so well from the league, especially with how everything was looking so horrible for them beginning of the season.
Uh, yeah, I do believe that Schaefer's impact in Esteghlal have been really good. He's got in a short while managed to turn Esteghlal around. But he had good players from the beginning. He just needed to find a good team from those players as well. And what's interesting about this group, as Sina said, it's a really strong group, and that's good for Esteghlal as well because basically everybody can beat everybody, which means Al Hilal, who usually are supposed to win their home and away games, all of a sudden will probably lose a couple of games, and that's good for the other teams. So I believe at the end of this campaign, we'll see this group with a some quite big surprises, and that's I believe will be in favor of Esteghlal actually. So I'm confident that they will do good, and they have a really strong defense, which I think is more important in the Asian Champions League because they play against much better players in Al Hilal and all other players that have international track record, which we shouldn't forget. So with Esteghlal doing good in the defense and with their new goal striker, I think they can manage to upset a couple of teams for sure.
All right, last question.
I think also if you look at the group and look at the results that have taken place in that group so far, you'd be able to really tell how close the teams are because out of the 4 games that have taken place in that group, there's been 3 draws and only 1 victory, and that was Esteghl's victory over Al Hilal. The rest of the games have been a draw, so I think there's still a lot of time to see where the group will go. But as Pezhman said, and I agree with him as well, Esteghlal have put himself in a good position so far.
Guys, the last thing I want to ask you before we talk about Zobahan's group is that right now with the situation SFL is in, do you guys think they could maintain it to advance? Sina?
Zobahan, I think, yeah, definitely. I think looking at the group once again, Al Duhail are a club almost newly formed in Qatar. They are what Lekhvia and Al Jaish used to be. That those 2 clubs formed to create Al Duhail, very powerful club in Qatar, and for me they were favourites to go up as the first team, and so far they've won both the games. Excuse me. But I think second place for me personally before the tournament started was between Zobahan and Al Wahda of the UAE. But now Lokomotiv Tashkent have done really well. They managed to beat Al Wahda 5-0 in the first game, which was a very surprising result. But for me, still Zobahan are in a good shape at the moment, and I think they would be disappointed if they don't go through to the next round.
Pezhman, if you could give us your thoughts on this group, and just the final thing I just want to go back to Group D with Esteghlal. Could you guys give me your thoughts on the group? Do you guys actually see Esteghlal still advancing with the likes of Al Ain, Al Rayyan, and Al Hilal? Pezhman?
Yeah, for sure. As I said before, everybody can beat everybody, and that's probably in Esteghlал's favor. And Zoban have an interesting squad with never aging Mehdi Rajabzadeh, who keeps scoring more and more for each year. So and they got a good start. So yeah, I'm confident that both will do good.
Sina?
Yeah, Zobahan, I think, as I said, they definitely do have a great opportunity to go to the next round, and I think Pezhman mentioned a very good point about the squad, and I really do like the squad. I think it's a mixture of experience and and young talent, and I think that mixture can be extremely helpful for them in this competition. But I think Alenoy, who's current manager, has some responsibility as well in terms of getting the team up to speed tactically and fitness-wise as well, because I think in the first game against Al Duhail, they were winning 1-0 up until midway through the second half, where they threw it away and ended up losing 3-1. So I think there's some work to be done on that side.
Awesome. Guys, last thoughts before we move on to talking about the Persian Gulf League. From your general thoughts, who would you say this year potentially could be the winner? I'm gonna start this off with Pezhman.
Let's say Persepolis just for fun. Why not? They got a decent squad, and they can do real good. Or I guess it will be probably some Chinese team from the east side, like Guangzhou Evergrande maybe.
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, the non-Iranian teams, Al Hilal as well. But I think one thing we also need to bring up is from SLR's group. If SLR do manage to get out of the group and qualify for the next round, that means one of either Al Ain and Al Hilal will be knocked out, which is, I think, a huge positive for any of the Iranian teams or any of the other teams in the competition, because that means one of the favourites almost for the competition have been knocked out. So I think there's a lot of confidence to take from that if SLR manage to get out of the group. And I think beating teams like that in the group stages will certainly mentally give them a lot of positivity and a lot of hope going further into the competition. So I think once again, if they manage to get out of the group stages, then potentially they could even get to the semis or even further.
No. The Asian Champions League, it is what it is, and it's just a pity that the Iranian teams still can play and Saudi teams still can play in their home turf when they play against each other. So it's a pity that they have to play in Oman and other natural venues.
Right. Guys, all right, let's talk about now the Persian Gulf League and last year champs Persepolis and Branko Ivankovic has been a revolution behind the scene, and even the brand of style of football they play is actually quite enjoyable to watch compared to the other teams. They're running with the league. Is there any notable differences, Sina, would you say, from last season till now with the work that Mr. Ivankovic has done?
It's more or less the same squad, with the exception, of course, of Taremi, who left the club. But Alipur, as Pezhman mentioned before, has done fantastically well since he's really stepped up to being a first-choice striker. Of course, there's Godwin mentioned as well, a Nigerian striker who did extremely well for Paycon last season. He joined Persepolis halfway through last season. There's been a couple of other additions as well, but they're almost on the they are on the substitute bench, such as Siamak Nemati and Pasha Rasana, Iraqi midfielder. But it's more or less the same squad with the same tactics, same formation. So really, I don't think they've strengthened. I mean, they've strengthened the squad, but I don't necessarily think they've strengthened the lineup as much. So their ability to they're almost confirmed as champions. To win the league by this much distance, I think is a failure more or less on other teams to be able to challenge them, rather than Persepolis actually improving the squad.
They are a joy to watch, even if they got hammered in the Champions League. The last games I'm seeing from them, I think they really play as a team, which is something we're not always used to when it comes to Iranian football. And also they have some spectacular players that can do that little extra thing that's necessary to take home those 3 points. And Godin Mesha, as Sina mentioned, so he's a goal scorer, interesting player, and he got his chance more or less because of the lack of Taremi, because he was suspended, and he took that chance and did really good. And Branko was his own good, that he have good people around him, like fitness coach and everybody else. That's those details are really important to that those in how can I say those details are what makes a club being from good to the best. And for me, that's one of the main reasons Persepolis are doing so good. They feel like a European team almost.
Guys, question I have for you guys next is obviously a club in Esfahan, Sepahn, that has always been a big powerhouse. Unfortunately, it looks like they're doing horrendous this season. Sina, why is this a situation, especially knowing that Sepahn has always been a top team in the Iranian league?
Well, there's plenty of reasons to really talk about in terms of Sepahan's failure to perform for almost 2 seasons now. But I think the main reason is that they are going through a transitional period, and they have been going through it for 18 months to 2 years now. And if you think of Sepahan historically in the past few years, in the past 10 to 15 years, you think of the likes of Hadi Aghili, Muharram Navid Kia, people like that. And they are not there anymore. They have all retired or left, and I think the club is really trying to find its new identity in terms of players. They've gone through a couple of managers. Abdullah Vaisi came to Sepahan after his unbelievable achievement with Esteghlal Khuzestan. They couldn't really do anything. Zlatko Kranjčar came back. Again, he didn't really achieve much, and he was sacked a few months ago. And then they brought in Mansour Ibrahimzadeh, who is a bit of a dinosaur, in my opinion. But they are really struggling. They're only 1 point above the relegation. 4 points above the relegation zone, I think, if I'm correct. But it's really tight in there. They haven't really been winning as many games. I've watched them a few times. They keep the ball well. They kept it moving pretty well. But it's just when it comes to creating opportunities, they were lacking in the final third. And I think certain they won't be relegated, no chance. But I think going forward, in terms of looking ahead to next season, there's a lot of improvements they need to have in the squad. They had Mehdi Sharifi back, a striker who I used to be a fan of before his loan moved to Tartus, but he's come back since January, and he's kind of given him he's almost been like a new signing. So he's given him a lot of firepower. So I think for the rest of the season, they'll just hope to get a few wins under their belt and improve their confidence, because they seem like they're lacking a lot, and just plan ahead for next season.
Pezhman, could you give us your thoughts on that, please? And also another question I have for you, which I'm pretty sure it's surprising everyone, is Parsa Jame Boucher. If you could talk about that as well, especially now that considering they're in 4th place in the league.
Well, I think Sina summed up pretty well what's happened in Sepahan. I just hope that they can bounce back, because before Persepolis, I think Sepahan has always been number 1 in Iran, considering being a professional club with harmony, and that's why a lot of players, when they went to Sepahan, they actually stayed for longer than 1 or 2 years, because they felt that they could progress, and they felt a harmony in the club, which was professional. And I think that they will bounce back as well as soon as they found their identity, and and what they can do with the club, and accept a couple of years of bad results for thinking of the long run instead. But yeah, the saga with Persian Boucher, I mean, that's simply amazing. They came up this year from Saemian League, and nobody was really expecting them to cause all this damage, making all this noise that have been done in the Persian Pro League, Iran Pro League so far. Although they have in the last couple of months, almost you can say, dropped a couple of places, they were in a serious candidate for taking the gold in the beginning, and that's something you have to respect, because when you look at the squad, I mean, you see a couple of interesting players, like, oh wait, there's Kabi, who was a great talent, but now you're like, to be honest, that's not the best known squad. So whatever they're doing in Boucher, I think they should continue with it, because they're a joy to watch, and I'm sure it can be a good inspiration to other smaller teams from other smaller cities, or smaller than Tehran and the other big cities, of course, that they can do some damage and they can get some points. They can even get a Champions League spot maybe after the season, and that's good for not being Persepolis, Istiqlal, Sepahan, Teraktor Sazi. So after this season, when it's over, we have to take a serious look at Pars Junubi Bushehr and ask ourselves, how did this happen? Were they good, or were other teams simply that bad?
Right. Interesting points, Pezhman. Sina, if you could just add on what Pezhman had to say, and just a follow up on that, please, is that if you could speak about teams that you possibly see getting relegated, going back to the Azerbaijan League.
Yeah, I mean, starting with Pasha Junubi, I think, as Pezhman said, it's a very interesting story, and under the management of Mehdi Tartar as well, who doesn't necessarily have a great record when it comes to managing teams in the Persian Gulf Pro League, but they started the season fantastically well, and for a little while they were the closest challengers to Persepolis. The season has kind of dipped off a little bit, as you would expect it in the last few weeks, but they are still in the Champions League hunt, a Champions League race, which I think is more interesting than the title race. Of course, the top three teams qualifying for the Champions League, but in third place you have Istiqlal along with, I think, four other clubs, and they're all on 38 points. And it's Istiqlal, Parsa Jam, Peykan, Fulad, and Saipan. They're all on 38 points, so it sets up perfectly for the rest of the season to see who can really challenge for that final spot. And of course, Zobahan are in second with 41 points, but I don't think they will really allow. They will slip up as much. But Pasha Junubi is right. They don't really have that many of big players, but they did make some interesting signings over the summer, and especially during the winter transfer window. Mohsen Furuzan is a good quality goalkeeper who has been performing well for them this season. They have a midfielder by the name of Hossein Pouramini, who has surprised a lot of people in Iran. He's a hard-working midfielder, and I've watched him a couple of times, and I think he's one of their key players. But they've also signed the likes of Mohammad Nouri and Mohammad Tayyibi over the winter transfer window, and they're hoping that those signings can be enough to get them a Champions League spot. But answering your question in regard to the relegation zone, relegation fights, Siyah Jamegan, who are at the bottom of the league, they've been in that position for a few seasons now, but somehow they've managed to survive for 2 or 3 seasons in a row, and I don't think the season will be. They'll be able to repeat it. They have 15 points. They are 8 points from safety. They've only managed to get 2 wins all season. They've just sacked Gholam Reza Inayati, so they're looking for a manager as well. And I don't think, looking at the squad as well and the state of the team right now, I think they are guaranteed to go down. It's Al Khuzestan who are occupying the other relegation spots. They've had severe financial problems. Some of their players hadn't been paid for a long time. It's kind of been interesting because that means they had to let go of a lot of players, but that meant they gave a lot of chances to young players such as Yunus Adelfi, who we saw in the under 17s World Cup, as well as Wahid Namdari, another young talent, 17-year-old. And I think in that sense it's been good for us neutral to see young players playing, but I think for Salah Khuzestan, Abdullah Vaisi has a tough challenge to keep them up. And then above that you have Sepid Rudarash, who are under the management of Ali Karimi, of course. Sepid Rud and Padide, they're only 3 points above.
Not anymore. I think Ali Karimi stepped down, didn't he?
Well, he won against Saipa 2 days ago. Saipa of Ali Doi, and it was a very interesting game in many sense. Of course, you've seen Ali Doi and Ali Karimi going head to head on the touchline. That was a very crucial win for them. So now Sepidrud with Padide, who's again, Padide is another one who started the season fantastically well. I think think second or third at one point in their season has gone completely wrong since then, and they're almost in a relegation zone. So I think right now, looking at how things are going, somehow I get the feeling that Istanbul Khuzestan might stay up, and Siyah Jamegan and Sepi Drud may be going down to the Azerbaijan League, but we've seen more weird things happen in the Iranian Pro League, so I might very well be wrong.
Yeah, and also, I made a mistake. Hossein Kabi, of course, played for Sepi Drud and not for Pashtun Bibusher.
Right, yeah.
Guys, I mean, Pezhman, can you give us your thoughts on the relegation battle? And on top of that, is there any notable team that has disappointed you from from the last season or 2 years ago till now?
Well, of course, we mentioned Teraktor Saati Tabriz, what they've done. They're actually closer to the relegation zone, and being champions. They're almost they're 28 points away, so that's something they can't forget. But they're only 9 points away from Champions League, and that's maybe not impossible. But yeah, Teraktor Saati Tabriz. It's a pity to see them because they are great fans, and it's always fun to see them. But some teams that have impressed me, I would say, Nafta Tehran, which they have some really old players, in a good former Istiqlal and Persepolis, the national team players that's done really good, considering that Naft is a really, really big mess of a team. I don't know even how they can exist, because you don't even know who's the coach, or you don't even know if they'll be able to have the same color on their shirts when they play a game, and you don't even know if when they're away game, are they supposed to take their own cars, will they fly, will they take the bus? I mean, the whole club is a mess, and they haven't of course getting paid the way they're supposed to, even if maybe the players are used to it. Considering all those negative things happening in the club, Nafta Tehran have done better than I would imagine. I would thought they will take 7, 10, 15 points, but right now they're taking 24 points, although of course only 4 points above relegation zone. But considering what state the club is, I think that's quite good achievement from them.
Sina, if you could add on what Pezhman said, and we're gonna wrap this up soon. And on top of what he said, please could you also add if there's any notable youngster or someone that maybe in the future team that they should look at?
Well, I think first of all I completely agree with what Pezhman said in terms of Nafta Tehran. This is a club that was so close to being folded completely about 2 or 3 months ago. But since Human Afazali has taken over from Ali Karimi, they've done fantastically well. I think they're on a six game unbeaten. They've had 4 or 5 draws. So I think for me that's very good. He's done a very, very impressive job so far, and if he manages to keep them up, then it would be a fantastic achievement for him and for Nafta Tehran. But I wonder what will happen to them next season, because as I said, they've changed owners I think 2 or 3 times this season. They've changed managers 4 times, so it's really, really disappointing to see a club of that stature in that situation. But in terms of young players, I think I already mentioned Yunus Delfi is one that I really like, of Istanbul Khuzestan, as well as Wahid Namdari, of course. But Soipo have a lot of good young players. Of course, Reza Jafari managed to score a goal the other week, and they have a few other interesting young players. Taha Shariati, of course, is another one. Players we are familiar with because of the Under 17s World Cup. But I wouldn't say there's been any notable youngsters who've done extremely well. But I think there are a few players who can, if they get the time, if they get the match time, they can prove to be a top player. But yeah.
Right. Guys, let's wrap this section of episode, of Goal Bezan up. And the last thing I just want to talk about is the derby is on March 1st between Persepolis and Esteghlal. Sina, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think the scoreline is going to be, quickly?
Well, Persepolis will definitely want to win the game. It's a big game as well, of course. I don't need to talk about the rivalry. A win for Persepolis will most likely mean they will win the league. So imagine how they would feel how Esteghlal would feel if they practically hand over the title to Persepolis with a defeat. But at the same time, Esteghlal will want to win because of the fight for the Champions League spots that I mentioned earlier on how tight it is. So it would make for a very interesting game, I think. I've been brought up as an Esteghlal fan, so I have to go for Esteghlal win. I'd go probably 2-1 to Esteghlal.
Pezhman?
I think it's a more important game for Esteghlal than Persepolis. Persepolis having 19 points more than Esteghlal. They can lose some games, but for Esteghlal, because they had such a poor start, a win against their main rivals, Persepolis, could at least make the fans happy for a while, and for them, I think it's a more important game than for Persepolis, and in that way, I think Esteghlal would be more motivated to take the 3 points. So I say actually 1-0 to Esteghlal, penalty. And probably when people are listening to this pod, the game has already been played, so we'll see who gets the closest results.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. As always, a pleasure to speak to you guys, and I'm pretty sure the listeners would enjoy this section as well. Sina, Pezhman, thank you guys.
Thank you, Pasha. Thank you, Sina.
Cheers, guys. Great to speak to you.
Take care.